Hi everybody. Okay, so I'm gonna try to do a reoccurring video that's just me reading a book, so it's kind of boring, but at the same time this book, it's called Theology of Prayer by Reverend John A. Hardin. He's a Jesuit. He's passed away. But this book is such a gem. So it's on prayer, and I'm going to be doing a video on prayer later. But there's 14 chapters, and I'm going to be trying to read the chapters to you and give pretty regular narrations of me reading this book. So we're going to start. The first chapter is called Meaning of Prayer. Some explanation may be necessary for going into such an obvious subject as the meaning of prayer. Why not start with something more practical, like how to pray or how to improve our prayer, and not begin with what must seem like needless concern with words? Here, the meaning of prayer. But I do not think it is a wasted effort to talk about what so many people are not doing, or not doing as well as they could. On all sides, we hear it said that the basic problem in the world today is the fact that people are not praying, or are not praying enough, and this is true. But it is not enough to say that we should pray, and should encourage others to do the same. We had better also know what prayer really means. Otherwise, as has happened to so many, we and they may, I do not say give up prayer, but not profit as much as we should for what is by all odds the most profitable enterprise in which any person can engage. There is nothing more profitable in which any human being can engage than to pray. We begin therefore by describing prayer in as simple language as we, that is, I, can. Prayer is conversation with the invisible world of God, the angels, and saints. We shall take each one of these terms in sequence and first talk about prayer as conversation. What is conversation? Any conversation with anyone. Or from what viewpoint? What do we do when we engage someone in conversation? We do several things. First, we begin to converse with someone when we become aware of that person. Awareness, then, is the first condition for conversion. Suppose I am just talking out loud to myself without realizing that I am being overheard. Is that conversation? Well, no. Why not? Because I am not aware of the other person's presence. If I was doing anything, and I was in conversation with myself. In fact, I think most people spend most of their waking hours in self-conversation, which is called to give it a term, a soliloquy, whereas true conversation is always a colloquy. It is not only awareness, but also awareness of someone else's presence beside my own. And many people go through life, I'm afraid, only dimly aware of anyone else's presence except their own. That is why self-centered people, even when they are apparently in conversation out loud with someone else, are most likely off really talking to themselves. Ever watch it? It is a spectacle. Real conversations begin when I am aware of another with stress on the other, and not only on myself. Second, besides being aware of someone, it has to be someone else. Conversation means that I wish to share with that other person something that I have. I wish to give of myself, of what is inside of me, or a part of me to that other person. There are thoughts in my mind that I want the other person to have also. There are sentiments in my heart, desires in my will, and feelings in my soul that I do not wish to possess alone. So I enter into conversation in order to share. So it's true that logically and psychologically I should not begin a conversation unless I have something that I wish to give someone else, which presumably that person does not yet have. That is why the highest act of charity among human beings is conversation, provided that it is genuine and not spurious conversation. Third, there is still more to conversation, as the very word implies. When I begin to converse, I literally turn towards the one with whom I wish to speak. The movement of my body facing that person is only the external symbol of what I should be doing inside of me. I am turning my spirit towards the one with whom I wish to talk. But as we know, it is quite possible to be physically facing someone without really conversing. There is no conversation worthy of the name unless I have thus inwardly turned aside from self and directed myself to another. We seldom reflect on the fact that the words convert, conversion, and conversation all have the same fundamental meaning of redirection, a turning away from one thing, in this case self, and turning towards something else, in this case another person. True, sincere, deep, genuine, total conversation is more rare than we think, so I often believe we use other people, as we say, as sounding boards, to listen to our own voice. They are just convenient to help us in what is still a continuous soliloquy. All real conversation, therefore, has the element of self-denial from one viewpoint. Self-sacrifice, where I turn from preoccupation with my own thoughts and desires and direct them towards someone else. Fourth, what is my purpose when I hold a conversation? My purpose is, or should be, to communicate. My intention is to bridge the gap that separates me from another person, to unite myself with that other person. In a word, to communicate by transferring something of what is me into to become part of what is he or she. We become united mainly by what we share in our own spirit with another person. Our Savior expressed for all time the deep meaning of conversation as communication when he told the apostles how they were no longer strangers to him but friends. Why? Because I have shared with you what is in me. I have told you what before I spoke was only on my mind. Now it is also on your minds. We have become united because a part of me. It is not now part of you. You and I are united because I have communicated to you what before I spoke to you was only mine. And then to emphasize the gravity of what he was doing, he said it was the Father who, first in conversation with the Son, had shared the plenitude of the divine nature, so that the Son in turn might share of what that fullness with others who would mainly become his children, because they would now receive what before belonged only to the Trinity. You belong to me, still Christ in paraphrase, and I belong to you because we now have in common the secrets that were hidden with God from all eternity. We might with reverence redescribe the Trinity as the eternal, infinite conversation among the three persons who constitute deity. We are still on the subject of conversation, if you please, and we're not finished yet. Fifth and finally, every conversation in some way or the other employs a response from the one to whom I am speaking. Conversation is not merely talking to someone, it is talking with someone. Unless that person is also saying something to me, I might be giving a speech or making an announcement, but I am hardly conversing. The way that person responds to me is immaterial. It may just be a smile, or depending on what to say, a frown. It may be only an occasion word or two. It may be only a yes with different inflections. You know, of course, there are at least 50 ways of saying yes, yes, yes. No matter what I say to that person, it must invoke something that he says to me, or we are not, in the deepest sense of the word, in conversation. It takes two, at least two, to converse, even when one may do most of the talking, and the other or others do most of the listening. I should add, just for the record, that when I speak publicly, besides looking at the script, I mainly watch the eyes and faces of my audience. I want to make sure that we are in conversation. So much for the first level of our reflection. We say that the prayer was first of all and fundamentally conversation, but this is no ordinary conversation. It is conversation with the invisible world. As conversation, prayer does not essentially differ from all of the forms of colloquial discourse, but prayer is no ordinary conversation. It is conversation with the invisible world, whose existence we now partially reason to, and then only quite dimly, but whose reality and grandeur we can fully know only by faith. Why call this world invisible? Because it is not seen with the eyes of the body, but it is known only with the eyes of the mind. It is not only visible to the eyes of the body, but also not audible with bodily ears, or tangible with bodily hands, or palpable with bodily lips, or perceptible with any of the bodily senses. And sadly, how tragically, some people suppose that because it is not sensibly perceptible, therefore it is not real. It is a world of faith that really exists, and as St. Paul tells us, is actually more real than the mountains, rivers, and seas, and more important than even the most important people we could ever meet on earth, who might give us, if they would, a few minutes' private audience or personal interview, and we would treasure the memory of these moments for the rest of our days. Prayer depends on the liveliness of our faith. Without faith, there is no prayer. Either I believe that there is more to reality than the sun, moon, and stars, and more than people I meet on the streets or in the privacy of my home, or I shall not pray. I shall limit my conversation to the visible world, and that is not prayer. Those who believe, pray. Those who do not believe, do not pray. Those who believe much, pray much. Those who believe little, pray little. Those who believe deeply, pray deeply. Those who believe weakly, pray weakly. You pray as you believe, neither more nor less. Faith is the condition for prayer. It is also the measure and the norm of the quality and quantity of our prayer. Faith tells us that the so-called invisible world in which we believe is greater than all standards than the visible world of space and time. It is more numerous, more powerful, more experienced, more beautiful, and much more holy, thank God, than the present world in which we live. It is a world that we sometimes mistakenly call the next world. It is not next at all, as though it still has to come into being, whereas it already exists. Who says it's the next world? It's a world that is deeply conscious of our existence, even when we are not conscious of its existence. And it is very interesting in our welfare, and it is a world that is not more easily accessible actually than the world that surrounds us. It is therefore what the world that is readily available for our conversation, if only we have the faith and vision to see. None of us wants to talk to no one. That's gonna end it. I mean, okay, I said it was in chapters, but I'm actually gonna go in a 21 day 21 day breakdown for this that this book comes with. So that's the first one. Think about it, pray about it, and I will try to come back ASAP with the next section. See y'all later. Bye.